Well, good afternoon, Lydia Prinsen and Jeroen Naves. Lydia Prinsen is from the City of Amsterdam, and Jeroen Naves is a lawyer at law firm Bels Rijken. Could I ask you to introduce yourself for this interview?
Yes, thank you first of all for the invite. My name is Lydia Prinsen and I work as an innovation manager for the Chief Technology Office of the City of Amsterdam. And I focus on using trustworthy technology within the city.
Yeah, well, good afternoon. Great to be here. Well, I'm Jeroen Naves and I'm a lawyer and focus on IT, especially for governmental organizations. And I'm involved in the drafting of first, the Amsterdam AI clauses and now the European version.
Yes, so that's what we're going to talk about today, procurement clauses for IE. And the first question is for you, Lydia. Why did the City of Amsterdam started to work on procurement clauses for buying IE, and in which context did they do so?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we all know governments are increasingly using AI and algorithmic systems to provide public services. And the City of Amsterdam is using it in primary city tasks. So like, for example, parking control or acting on reporting issues in public spaces from citizens. So Amsterdam has several instruments to guarantee the use of AI in a secure and responsible manner, but we want to ensure that the digital human rights of our citizens, entrepreneurs, and visitors are safeguarded, not only offline, but also online. And this requires ethical principles like participation and inclusion during the design, the development, the application, and the operation of AI and algorithmic systems. However, by being transparent, which is an important condition for citizens' trust in the government, it's more and more public services start to depend on AI and algorithmic systems. So we want to be transparent about the use of it during the decision-making process. And the AI clauses are as set standards and they create obligations and establishment to be trustworthy and transparent. So in the last couple of years, many guidelines and frameworks have been published on the algorithmic accountability. And a notable example is the ethic guidelines for trustworthy AI by the high-level expert group of AI advising the European Commission. But of course, there are many other examples we know. So all of these frameworks have in common that they name transparency as a key principle. However, the next step was how can we operationalize this concept? So we have designed several instruments for trustworthy use of AI, and they are together forming and shaping the algorithm life cycle policy of the city, with one of those instruments, the procurement conditions, which is a joint force result of several Dutch and international experts, which is published in November 2020.
Great. Then I have a second question, maybe for Jeroen. You were there from the beginning, helping the City of Amsterdam drafting these clauses. What were the first experiences working on the clauses and working with the clauses? And what kind of feedback did you and the city receive while you were drafting them?
Yeah, well, it's been a very interesting process, especially like Lydia already mentioned, when we started working on the first drafts of the AI clauses, the Amsterdam clauses, or how we call it. Yeah, like Lydia said, there were only guidelines, so we really were the first ones who were working on a more practical product, a tool that could be used by the City of Amsterdam first, but of course also by other governments. And we work closely together with AI experts and legal experts, other experts from the City of Amsterdam. And in these first ways, we paid a lot of attention to, well, all kind of definitions. So what is an algorithm and what is AI? What forms of transparency can we distinguish? How to deal with issues like IP and data ownership, which is a complex topic as well. And in this early phase, we worked closely together, or we created sessions where we could discuss all these topics with, well, the IT suppliers working together with the City of Amsterdam. So already from the beginning, actually, there was, well, some input from the business, as I would say so. And what me surprised was that they were, well, remarkably positive about the clauses. They understood very well that in a situation where you, as a government, are using an algorithm when when you're performing a public task, there needs to be a certain degree of transparency. So there was a lot of understanding, and it was very useful to work together with them. And they were also critical about certain points. One of the interesting discussions is, of course, well, in practice, how are you going to share certain information? How are you really going to be transparent about the working of a certain algorithm? And we also had, for example, discussions about, well, the protection of trade secrets, because on the one hand, from a city perspective, it's really important to be transparent towards the people living in the city. But on the other hand, there's also trade secret from the supplier, which needs to be protected. So it's some kind of balancing act. And, well, by having a lot of discussions with experts from different fields, we try to create well, solution for both situations.
Yes, and then you got the idea, or we got the idea, to scale up these clauses to European level and collaborate with European Commission. Lydia, maybe you could explain a little bit why you think it's a good idea to collaborate on European level, and how did this collaboration start?
Yes. I think the ambition of this project has always been to show that it is possible to operationalize general guidelines for AI ethics, because it's important and necessary to regulate AI. So this, of course, from the mindset that we want to safeguard the digital human rights and use at the same time all the advantages that digitalization may bring to a city. So because of interest from other players in Europe with regards to the Amsterdam practices and the further promotion of ethical AI by having a European standard for the public procurement of AI and algorithmic systems, we hoped and we aim to make that next step. But first of all, the cooperation started off by the European Commission, who contacted the City of Amsterdam. And its success is hidden, I guess, in the implementation and upscaling from a national to a European level. So for this reason, DG Connect and DG Grow of the European Commission jointly decided to announce this collaboration by holding a webinar, which also can look back if people are interested. And during this webinar, we shared our experiences on the AIclauses, and Jeroen took the floor to explain more in depth what the clauses are about. And from there on, we started creating a draft version of the European AIclauses.
Yes, there is currently a draft available. Jeroen, you changed the Amsterdam clauses into European clauses, keeping also the upcoming the text of the upcoming AI legal framework in the back of your mind. What were the most difficult issues to convert the Amsterdam clauses into a European draft, and what was the role of that upcoming legal framework in this process?
Yeah, so thanks, Anita. Interesting question. And so what we try to do is that we grabbed, well, both the content of the proposed AI Act and more or less the best practices out of Amsterdam and try to combine them in one new draft of a, well, more European version of the AI clauses. And by doing so, we worked closely together with the legal experts from DG Connect, who are also involved in the draft of the AI Act. And well, I think in the end, we hope that we have a version which is useful for governments who want to anticipate on the new proposed AI Act. And in that context, it's important to realize that the AI Act is not just an act, but contains a lot of best practices in the field of AI. So also, aside from the fact that at a certain moment there, of course, the AI Act will enter, or possibly the AI Act will enter into force and become the law. It also contains a lot of best practices which can be very useful for governments who would like to procure AI right now. And well, during this process, there were, of course, a few challenges. I think for me, the most important challenge we're faced with, and we're currently still faced with, is the fact that the AI Act mainly focuses on high-risk AI systems. And well, when incorporating the text of the proposed AI Act into these AI clauses, more or less the clauses are also focusing on high-risk AI systems, which can be a bit, well, I would say heavy for governments who are procuring low-risk AI systems. So I think the biggest challenge is how to use certain components out of the current version of these AI clauses when procuring low-risk AI systems. And so actually my purpose for the coming months is, well, to create more guidance. How are you picking certain aspects out of the clauses? Another challenge is of course also the fact that the AI Act is still under development. So new versions of the AI Act will be published possibly by the end of this year, maybe this fall. So the AI clauses also will need to be updated. I don't expect huge changes, but a new text need to be created based on the new draft of the AI Act. Well, something else to be aware of is, of course, the fact that the Dutch version, the Amsterdam clauses we created, are based on, well, the Dutch legal system. The new European version is based on the AI Act and certain other European rules that could apply to AI, but does of course not take into account specific national rules. So if you want to apply the AI clauses, you also of course need to be aware of the fact that there might be certain rules based on national law which need to be incorporated.
Yes, great. We will certainly attach also the draft clauses again to this interview, and everybody who listens to this interview is still very much invited also to send in their comments and help us in this process to really make it European clauses. Then the last question I have is to you both, and it's maybe a little bit more personal question, and that is, what is your dream concerning the further development and use of the AI clauses? In the best scenario, in your dreams, how would a bright future look for you? I'm very curious to hear. We start with Lydia.
Thanks. I think in the ideal scenario, the clauses would be widely shared, and there would be commitment, and it's implemented on a high scale. Actually, for two reasons, I think. Firstly, to actually collect that feedback that Jeroen also was talking about from various stakeholders, so we can use it for the next version of the European AI purchase conditions. And so I hope a lot of stakeholders attend in the community of practice. Secondly, also, I think it's necessary that the terms and the conditions are widely promoted and implemented, simply because it's needed to promote trustworthy AI and algorithmic systems. I think that's the only and one of the most important steps forward, actually, to make sure that there are digital human rights, and we act based on ethical standards in line with the public interest, and at the same time that we improve people's quality life as a city. So that would be my high shots.
Very nice. Maybe also the market would like universal clauses, so they recognize them every time they want to subscribe to a procurement. But maybe I'm mowing the grass ahead for your feet. Now we will listen to your dream scenario.
Well, no, I think of course, in the end, we hope to create these standards. And for me personal, I really hope this won't be just like more or less an academic project, but we can really create a practical tool which will be used by procurers all over Europe, and not only by AI experts, but also by buyers who do not buy AI every day. And I think this requires that the AI clauses become a bit more dynamic and flexible, so they can be used in all kinds of situations where AI is procured. So I think that's the short-term dream, and the next step we need to take.
Yes, talking about next steps, together we are currently working on a community of practice on a new digital platform we're developing called the Digital Public Bias Platform. More news will be about this platform coming towards the end of this year. For now, I really would like to thank you for making time for this interview and to take us a little bit on your journey from the City of Amsterdam to Brussels, taking with you these procurement clauses and bringing them to a next level. So thank you very much. And with this, I'm going to close our interview. Thank you.
Thank you.